Hello everyone, and welcome to this video where we have a very interesting discussion to talk about, and it comes in the form of an update, or sort of rather a teaser, that the developers have listed right here in the minor fixes update v1.7.7. And if you scroll down here, you see this paragraph. It says a long-standing request we had was to add compressible gases. This is useful for a bunch of stuff, especially submarines, something we're looking at. They're saying that air and exhaust can already be pumped and all that stuff. Now here they talk about the mechanics of the game. They have to be mindful for changing major things and that it may affect some vehicles. And honestly, with that, I saw a bunch of comments of people saying if someone's not updating the vehicle anymore, like if you have, call it a vehicle that's no longer being updated and kind of worked on, in that case it's just outdated. So, and I do agree, I go through any major update and I make modifications to my vehicles, and I think that many of the users will do the same, and if they don't, then it unfortunately just becomes lost to the update of the game, which is a good thing by all accounts. So let's dive into explaining how these compressible gases could be great. So here we have the Cont 3 or Container 3 mini sub. It's the size of a container, very easy to put into most vessels. Now, what the compressible gases, or how it works in an actual submarine, and how I made a workaround here. So you have this chamber that lets you sort of enter and exit the water, the airlock chamber here. And the way it works in this is we have our massive ballast tanks here with batteries, as you can see. And once we've achieved our neutral buoyancy, those tanks are full of water. Now, say you're underwater and you want someone to leave the mini sub using this hatch. You pump water from your ballast tanks into the decompression chamber, or rather airlock chamber, not decompression, airlock chamber, and open this door. In that case, you haven't added or removed any air from the system, and you haven't added or removed any water from the system, so you're exactly the same weight. Now, what this update could possibly let us do is, instead of pumping from these, you'd actually have, call it a tank, and for that purpose we're just going to use the float just to demonstrate. So say you have a float, not a very good spot mind you, but let's just put it somewhere. Of course, we're just going to put it right up there. Okay, there you go. So now that thing's full of compressed air. So let's say the compressed air inside this tank, or float, or vessel, or whatever you want to call it, is equal to all the air inside here. Or maybe, since it's compressed, and that's up to the developers, they could compress it, say 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, whatever, but the air inside this guy is equal to maybe 5 times how much the size of this is. So it's enough to fill all the air in here. And what you do is you'll purge that water out by pumping it out simultaneously while filling air from this into this airlock chamber. And that way you physically pump water out of this airlock chamber. Sorry, you have to open the door first. So you'd open the door, or you'd flood it, and then to push it out, you have this air pumped in while simultaneously pumping out the water. And that's a great way that these massive ballast tanks, for actually making the submarine go up and down, could work. Because right now, you're at the mercy of the weight of the submarine, and you have to use the propellers to push it back to the surface once we've filled up. If you're familiar with how my subs work, or how anybody's subs work, you could use these propellers, but you can't pump the water out once you're at a certain depth. So that's where this type of ballast or purge system will work, and will greatly help submarines, as well as submarines and other things as well. Like, back to this oil refining process. If you remember in my oil refining video, we had this diagram that showed where the diesel, where the jet fuel will all come out. And now here you have butane and propane. So the addition of compressibles and gas could be the introduction of propane and butane in the form of gas forms that get distilled in your distillation tower. So see here, we have our really tall and narrow distillation tower. Technically, you'd be able to add a second row up here, and you'd be able to sell and transport your propane, and you could compress it into a reservoir or trailer or ship and that type of thing. And then you could put it into here. You could compress it, not in this version, this is for liquefied or liquid contents, but if you had the gas version of the tanker truck, you'd be able to pump up and compress a bunch of it. There's also an interesting topic, the gaseous fire suppression systems, which are pretty much canisters of gas that you pump into a room that's on fire. So now instead of fire suppression systems using water, you could potentially, or the developers could potentially introduce a liquid, or rather, sorry, a gas that you can pump into a room and create a fire suppression system. You pretty much remove all the air. Anyone in that room will have to have firefighting gear and air tanks because there's no more air or oxygen, but it will eliminate the fire because the fire will not be able to breathe. This whole room will be flooded with this fire suppression gas, and there's no oxygen for the fire to breathe, and it gets put out. And that's a common, or rather that is a technique that is used sometimes in industrial settings and in ships too, for fire suppression. You just pump in this gas. So that's something else they can do if they kind of take this gas and compressibles to the next level. So I'm just excited to see what they come up with. I can't wait to see what the large DLC update is. I will be making some videos of my guesses and sort of ideas for rather DLC and or major updates to Stormworks. But please keep in mind that whenever I do that, I'm just doing it as a suggestion. I'm not pushing for it. I'm not saying this is what has to be done. And sometimes the comments say things like, oh, this is the stupidest idea. I'm not trying to get into a fight with anyone. I'm just trying to say what is out there as an option, and whether or not the market or the customer base for Stormworks is in agreement with it or not is up to the developers. I love this game. I want to provide them with as much ideas in my time, and I know that some of them have reached out to me and enjoy my content and my ideas. So thank you for watching. Enjoy my video. I have lots of videos planned, but as the summer is so short in Canada, I don't quite want to spend all of my nice weather time gaming, but I will be making more videos and creations, so stay tuned and happy Stormworksing.